Good morning, everyone. We have Shay Lynch today on our episode. And Shay, do you want to tell a little bit about yourself? Tell a little bit about what you do so everybody that's listening can get to know you.
Thanks, Anastasia. I'm a business architect and I'm an engineer by trade. And I say that because I'm very systematic about how I do what I do. And with that, I've been honored and grateful enough to win a few awards for the results I get with my clients over the number of years. I've written a few books, one on business and one on goals. And I'm actually writing another book at the moment, all on business architecture and how I help companies improve their frameworks, their vision, their leadership style, and how to get their teams complementing and swimming the same direction. So all the process, the strategy, the vision, and the people are swimming together, not against each other. And as I said, I've written a book on goals. Goals is a big part of what I do. I like to test my own boundaries, and I currently do ultra marathons. I have played international sports and represented my country with table tennis. So I am very sporty by nature. And of late, in the last few years, I've taken up ultramarathon. So I did an 80-kilometer ultramarathon over the Wicklow Mountains here in Ireland, and I'm training for 160 at the moment. So that's a little bit about me.
I can't imagine myself running for such distance. So I applaud you for such achievements.
Thanks.
So you said you do work with teams, you do work on coming into situations where businesses are looking to change, to improve. So if you imagine you walking in through the doors, obviously people did call you in, there is some sort of red flags, but what is your red flag? As you come in, you look around, you have a few conversations with different people, what is your red flag that you know that yes, there is change that needs to happen here to make the growth sustainable for the company?
Really good question, and there's many layers to that answer. So one of the first things I always do is I go in and do a bit of an audit. And the first thing I like to do is just have open conversations with the senior leaders of the business, that maybe the CEO and the senior management team. And I like to get things from different perspectives. Here's the interesting thing. If I've worked with companies that have 10 senior leaders, and I ask them the same question: what's the biggest challenge you have in business today? I could get 10 different answers. So that's my first point of call, because what happens is they're all telling me their challenges from their perspectives. So it's only partial truths. So the reason why I say that, then I know there's silos in place, that they're not all connecting correctly, both in process and information flow through the course of the business. So that's one of my key questions to ask. Then I have literally 10 data points, and then I go, okay, let's get some data, like prove all this, so then we can build a business case to improve it. Then out of those 10, I find out what are the top three. And then the whole point is bringing them together. I'm not telling them in the background. We're actually working this together, so then they see the truth as well. Because the first part is about diagnosing reality. Move away from perception, which I call the illusion of truth, and get into reality. But it's no point in me telling them, they have to see it and feel it too. So we do it as a team exercise. And it's also the first time usually they're actually starting to work and collaborate together. So that's a big part, getting the glue. There's no point in having great frameworks and great strategies and visions if there's no glue in the business. And that's about creating cross functionality. So the red flags I see really on the ground are silos. So different teams, they're functionally excellent, but cross functionally, there's a lot of opportunities and improvements that can be made.
So it's like
Yeah.
several parts not talking to each other, each doing and swimming in their own direction.
And doing a great job.
Yeah, and sometimes I found, I'm not sure if you noticed as well, that it's almost like the separate teams tend to work against each other. When you put them in the team exercises, they start seeing things slightly differently, and they see how much more embedded results they can get if they actually communicate and collaborate together.
Yeah, absolutely. And the great example of what you just described. So I could go in and do a brainstorming session with a marketing team as to set up the foundations of what we need to fix. And then inevitably, when I ask them about their biggest challenges, one of them is, well, we give all these leads to sales and we don't hear anything about them. And then I go into the sales, they're giving out about the sales team. Then I go into the sales team and I do something similar. And then I get a similar answer. Well, we get all these rubbish leads from marketing. We can't do anything about it. And they're a classic case of contradictory KPIs. And what happens is, so the first question I then ask each leader, do you ever talk to each other? So you both define the word lead, what it means for you, and you create these feedback mechanisms. Marketing sends you all these different cohorts of leads, you flush them, and then you go back to them and tell them, well, this cohort worked very well, this not so much. let's have a conversation to see how we can streamline it again next time so we get better targeted on our marketing campaigns. So there's less flushing and there's more just follow through. And the other thing then is going back to the silo. So there's competition for multiple different reasons. When you create, if you think of a traditional org structure, so you have the CEO, senior management, and it branches out like a pyramid, and which is great. Don't get me wrong, there's value to doing that. But that's not the only view that businesses should have, because what you're actually teaching the business is to work in silos. I'm in a box over here in marketing, so I'm focusing on marketing. I'm not doing anything in sales. These are my boundaries, and that's it. And that's not necessarily a conscious thing, but that's just what happens on the ground. And that's by design. So we need to design better mechanisms for cross functionality, not just putting people in boxes. Does that make sense?
And yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. Just a couple of questions on that is, why does it happen? I mean, you work with so many companies, right? And it seems to be a very common thing, like miscommunication, lack of alignment. Why do you think this happens in the current world?
There's one very simple answer to this question, Kirsty. Everybody's too busy. The world is gone too busy. Everybody's just too busy doing the do. They don't have time to step back and think about what they're doing. And here's an interesting, and this has always been the way, by the way. This is no different. It is gotten more elevated since the pandemic because productivity has gone a lot higher. There's more expectations from everyone, from management, from people as well. So there's a lot more contradictions in business through what's happened with the pandemic. But this has always been like that. And if I go in, another question I ask. So I was with a client this morning, like on site, and I was asking questions when they were walking through the flow with me, the process flow. I was going, why do you do it this way? What do you think the answer is?
I guess
Because
I don't
we've
know,
done it all the time.
That's
The way we've
because we've always done it.
Yeah. And see, that's in lies the problem. They don't have time to think. They're too busy doing the do. And thinking and then changing and disrupting their current capacity management and processes is too much effort for them, because then they fall behind on their targets. So they're just firefighting every day. And what I do when I come in, I don't go in with all the answers. Now, because of my experience, I've been doing this for a very long time. I have a reasonable idea of what the issues are. There's no point in me telling them. I have to make them feel them themselves. So then we create workshops. We start doing brainstorming sessions. And then I would facilitate. I would lead them down multiple different avenues through strategic questioning so they come to conclusions themselves. And then when they come to these conclusions, and by the way, that's not always the case. Some of them do have genuine great ideas, and we work through them. Again, we don't just jump to the solution. We gather data. We just assess to see, is it worth pursuing? Then we do a pilot study offline and then check. And then if it's good, great. If it's not, if it's nearly there, we tweak it until we bring it into full scale operation. Then we create a new process. So it's a journey to get there. It's not just, okay, change this, then don't measure. Because again, you're falling into the trap. Well, we don't really know why we did it anymore. We just changed it. And again, the same when I was asking the questions, why did you buy that equipment? It's different than the ones over there. I don't know. And I'm sure there was a good reason, but now what's happened, there's two processes in the business to do the exact same thing. And it's too expensive to change. That's part of it. Things grow organically, not systematically. That's where I come in and I teach them how to do these things. And by the way, it's not that people are bad. People are genuine. They've got amazing goodwill. They're genuinely doing their best. And they're never that far off the mark. So my goal is to make their process more controlled. Give them really strong frameworks, not just process frameworks, but leadership and management frameworks, and a set of governance around how you do what you do. To the same point as I was saying, to make sure everything in the business, vision, strategy, people, management, processes, IT systems, everything is swimming in the same direction. So there's no contradictions along that way and blocking good progress.
It sounds fantastic. If all businesses could work like that, I think we would have much more progress and much more success than we do now, because all these things are very often misaligned. You already mentioned a little bit that you're guiding people. You're not telling them what to do. You're guiding them into what they already know would be best for them. I'm sure you still encounter some resistance. How does that manifest? How does this look, and how do you go about, let's say if somebody will be listening and maybe on personal level in their own department they would like to introduce some change. How do you tackle that? Because sometimes this resistance can be rather strong, especially when it's coupled with we've done this for the last 20 years, so why would it change? Plus the fear of change itself.
Yeah, this happens all the time. And the first thing I always say, expect resistance, number one, right? Because this is a psychological thing. And it's like anything, when this change happens, I learned a simple principle many, many years ago. Someone said it to me, and it's called the mourning curve, right? Mourning. And there's two elements to there's the downside on the beginning, which is the emotional side. And then there's the rational side. On the emotional side, people are going to have feelings of fear, anxiety, stress, frustration, bitterness, anger, all those things. Because why? As much as I'm a change agent, our brains don't like change because it's disrupting its routines. Our brains would love you to sit on the couch all day long and watch Netflix because it's easy and safe in the moment. Not necessarily good for your health, but it's safe. And your brain is a protective mechanism. If you change those routines, it's disrupting how your brain operates. Your brain will resist. It's part of our programming. So that's why I call change disruption, not just change. It is disruption because it's disrupting how people work. And then when you say that to process, even though the change will make their life better, people will still resist because they have to change. And what I always say, that mourning curve on the emotional side, one of my principles when I'm helping leaders implement change is to say, you got to help people move through the emotional side of that curve as quickly as possible without rushing them. Okay. And that's really important because if you rush them, they'll put up a block. And this is happening a lot, especially there's a lot of change anxiety when it's come to technology and AI, because people have genuine fears of losing their job. And then fears of how to use technology. Maybe some of the older generation, they're not as tech savvy as most people. I'm getting to the stage where I'm not tech savvy now. And I love technology because I look at kids and computer games now and I go, I thought my nephew was giving me one of his handsets to play soccer with him on FIFA. And he goes, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I thought you gave me this." No, he's using two sticks for his game. I go, "That's beyond me." But that happens. That's part of a generational thing. But it's very important to know this is what happens. And they need to move through those emotions. And eventually they will get to, well, it's happening. How do I make it the best for me? How do I accept it and make it work for me? Make the best. And then the people, anytime we make change, then when they come into it, they'll actually go, this is actually pretty good, even though they resisted. And that's a really important point to know. And that's why when I come in, I don't force change on people. This is why I use a mechanism to draw the ideas out of them. Because when it's their ideas, there's less resistance. They're part of the change. And not only that, there's many layers to the psychological element of that, because now they feel important. Whatever they're doing and saying matters. They're part of something now. They're excited at whatever they've said is being implemented. It makes them feel good.
Yeah, they're initiating that change instead of being forced into it.
Exactly.
And it's the thing we do in coaching, right? It's instilling sense of ownership for any change that is going to happen.
Brilliant. Yeah, that's it in a nutshell. Well said, because it is about instilling ownership. It's not being forced on them. They're accountable and responsible for it.
It's, something that caught my attention that you mentioned, Shay, is what you're urging or telling leaders to do is to do it as quickly as possible, but without rushing the employees. Yeah. Are there any techniques that maybe soft skills that leaders can use to bring that change, the emotional part of it, as smoothly as possible with having some resistance, but having as little emotional resistance as possible?
Yeah, and great question. And you're into classic coaching now, because I believe a leader's role should be multiple layers to it. It should be the leader, your manager, your coach, your mentor, and also your counselor. So there's many layers, and you have to step into those roles as required. And you have to adapt to whatever situation and whatever people, the emotions they're having. Because what's very important here, just before I answer that question, Harshit, is when people get stuck. And this is another very important principle in business. It's not just good enough to measure people for performance. And that's the classic thing to do. And yes, it's very important. But if you truly want people to perform at their best, you got to make sure they're fulfilled. So they're, to me, the two major markers that you need to work through with every individual in your business, or as a manager or leader, whoever is reporting into you. Are they performing? Are they fulfilled? Because guess what? If they're not fulfilled, performance will drop. And I'll give you the classic example. Like when you have a new hire coming in, they're all motivated. So they're very fulfilled naturally because it's new, it's excited, but they're not performing very well because they don't know. They have to learn. So in a better way, you could describe them like the hamster on the wheel, moving fast and getting nowhere. But through good training and coaching and bringing them along the journey to a strong onboarding process, you're going to get them to now the performance to match the fulfillment. And then your goal is to keep it there by creating journeys for them, individual journeys for them. So that's how you manage and lead normally on the ground. You create journeys for people. But when you're in a situation where you're pushing people too hard and they're not feeling fulfilled, so they're contributing a lot, but eventually, if they're not fulfilled, they could turn a corner and become institutionalized. And I call them the crash and burners. And the problem with them is they can be contagious. And either one or two things can happen. They'll leave. And this is happening a lot in the world we operate now since COVID. If they're not fulfilled, they will leave. The younger generations want to feel more fulfilled than what they do. They want to feel they're making a difference. If you're not giving that, they'll leave. Worse, they'll stay and leave and come back in contribution. That is the big danger. So going back to your original question, it's about understanding a few core principles. How do you understand? And this is about, by the way, another principle is to create really strong relationships. It's not just about, I'm your manager, do what I say. That's not the world we operate in. This is about building relationships. And I always say in business, you should build relationships akin to family and friends, because what do family and friends do for each other? They look out for each other. And that's what you need to create, a culture of people helping each other. And you mentioned, I have an interesting illustration here that I'd like to share. And this is all the preventative side of your question, Hushvid, but then there's the situational side that you must address too. So we mentioned collaboration and we mentioned competition. Would you believe they're both, to get the best out of your team, contributing fulfillment, you need both, right? And let me explain that a bit deep. And I'm going to compare it to a soccer team. I like soccer, right? Anyone here like soccer or any other sports?
Yeah.
I'm not really into sports, but
Yeah, but like it's the team thing. One thing that's very important to know, and I'm going to use soccer as the example, right? My team I grew up on is Liverpool, and they had a really good patch. And they're struggling a bit this year, but what Klopp did before Klopp, who was the manager of Liverpool, they were struggling, and the world of sports has changed. There's too much monetary influence. And when I grew up with the older generations, they played with honor and camaraderie for their comrades. They were best friends with their people. They went drinking together. They were friends outside their football, and they weren't as healthy as the sports stars now, but they played with pride and passion, not just for them, but for their comrades on the pitch with them. And creating that camaraderie is very important. A lot of that is gone in sports. But you know when a team is playing well, so you've got 11 people on a pitch, probably a squad of 30. So there's another 19 players there. And I'm going to come back to them in a minute. So when you have those 11 players on the pitch and you're watching them play on TV and they're playing great, everything is syncing, you know everything is going on well in the training grounds and the back rooms and everything's going well. You see it, you feel it on the pitch. And then inversely, when things aren't going well, you can see the nattering, giving out and moaning and bad pass and all that. Then you know things aren't great. You can see it. So that camaraderie piece is very strong. And that's why Klopp brought that into Liverpool, where people became friends. Because what do you do for friends? You look out for each other, you help each other, you support each other. If someone's not having a good game at the back line, the midfielder's going back to help them. So that's the camaraderie. Where does the competition piece fit into this? Well, guess what? Competition is good. Friendly competition is good. Those 30 players are competing for 11 people on the pitch, 11 places. So there's healthy competition, which is very powerful. So it's creating that dynamic and influence in the business where healthy competition, friendly competition, as well as collaboration. So to your point, as you said, Hershid, when we see those silos, yeah, they competing with each other, but how do you change it so it's not too competitive and create a friendly example to it situation? So it's powerful, But here's the thing. These are all the preventative measures. You build that culture because you want to create a culture of people helping each other. And when I help you, for example, to meet a deadline, you're under pressure and I help you and you meet the deadline and everything goes very well. You're happy you met the deadline. You're happy also that I helped you meet the deadline. I took time out of my busy schedule to help you. So and I'm happy that I helped you meet the deadline and you got your deadline. So multiple people are happy there. Then what's really interesting, and Roberto Cialdini, the Pillars of Influence, he talks about this, the law of reciprocity. So not only are you more inclined to help me when my back is against the wall, you're more inclined to help other people. That's the interesting part. And I always say helping people are happy people and happy people are performing people. And that's the culture you want to build in where people help each other, not just within teams, across teams as well. So these are all the sort of frameworks you build, but you are going to have situations and you must deal with them efficiently and effectively. Because as I said, if one person turns a corner, they don't feel fulfilled, and they're not leaving, but they're cutting back on contribution, that can be contagious. And you have to protect your culture. I'm not going to say the words at all costs, but if you don't protect it, that's going to be a disease running through your business very quickly. And I always say, Peter Drucker says, culture eats strategy for breakfast. I believe there's a missing part. Culture only beats strategy when you don't pay attention to it and the culture starts working against you. So they're both needed in business. Strategy and culture, they need to be intrinsically linked and complementing each other. When they compete, that's when things happen. So going back to your initial question, this is where the counseling piece comes in as a leader. You need to know what's going well in their life, what's not going well in their life, and what are their strengths, because I like to let people play to their strengths. Because when they play to their strengths, they're brilliant. So again, this is all design, but it has to be genuine and authentic, right? And instill that into your teams and create a really strong psychological, safe place of trust where people can open up to you. Because if you don't have that, well, you will have those challenges that you speak about. So when you learn, and again, I go back to the word relationships, it's relationships, and you build. And that starts at the hiring process, that you only bring in the people, great attitudes that love to work with people and collaborate and learn new things. They're the ingredients for me to create strong performing teams. Does that make sense? I know I went a long
This is
way.
really actually amazing.
Yeah. I really liked what you said. And actually, you've shown light onto complexity of leadership itself. Lots of people see it as a role, like you said, as a job. I'm a manager. This is what I do. This is what my daily tasks are. But actually, it's much more complex if you want for it to be successful, if you actually want to lead your team, your department, your colleagues potentially. Maybe you're not at that stage yet, but you want to be helping people. You do have to start paying attention at different roles that you have to be. And like you said, it really resonated with me that you not only have to be a leader, you also have to be a counselor. You need to be a coach. You need to be a mentor. You need to really consciously come to this where you address all of that, sort of like ecologically in a way. So it comes together in the end. Really like that. That's great.
Yeah, and that's it's really important. And what I do when I'm taking on new clients, I don't just look to improve the business. There's two streams of work. One is to, well, I'm going to help you with the business, and the other one for me is a non-negotiable, that you have to go on a journey as a leader. Because if you're not, I'm not going to work. Because my goal is to help you become the leader the business needs, not stay as the leader you are. Because if you want to do new things, you have to become a better person. And that's not making them something they're not. That's me learning about them and seeing, well, what are the ranges? Because you'll see all these terms about situational leadership, strategic leadership, servant leadership. And I struggle with these personally because you're putting yourself in a box. Again, you're pigeonholing yourself. There's a time, and by the way, I believe everything is situational. You need to be adaptive. And there's multiple different scales. Sometimes you have to lead by doing and helping. Sometimes you have to lead by bringing people forward with you. There's a time to be direct. There's a time to be indirect. Know the difference. And it's not binary. It's a scale. That's just one example. There's many types of scales that you can work through because you have to know what's the bright version of you. And it's not about not being authentic. You need to know which parts of you need to flex in a given time to help the process and the people and the business move forward. And it's not a one size all. That's why every day is a learning day when you're a leader. And it's so important now. It's never been as more important as it is in today's world, because the cost of everything is going up. There's a lot of disruption going on in the marketplace. There's a lot of uncertainty. Have you ever heard of the VUCA world? The volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. This has been around for a long time. It's even more relevant today. You have to negotiate all of this personally with your own mindset to keep a business going. Then you have to lead teams and people. And here's the problem. I have a process that I help my leaders on, and it's called PACT, PACT. And it's twofold. It's a process and a commitment, a pact with yourself that you commit to staying in a critical thinking and strategic mindset every single day. And it's also a 4-step process to go from perception to actuality, then to actually take action so you don't procrastinate, right? So it's all about, like, turn the illusion of truth, as I said, get information so you know the actual facts, then assess what needs to be decided, then choose what is the scenario. You could have multiple scenarios, then take action. So I bring them on that journey. Sometimes it's a very quick mindset thing you do on a daily basis. You have big decisions to make in the business. There's a process and set of tools for each step. So it's all very calculated and systematic, that you have something to fall back on when you're feeling overwhelmed. I did a white paper last year about, since COVID, well, what are all these new challenges leaders have, because the world had changed. And I researched about 11 major challenges, and then through the process of process of interviews and meeting them and talking to them, and then lots of surveys filled out, we narrowed it down to the 5 major challenges that leaders must face now and beyond. And there's no new challenge. They're all the same that's been existed. What's happening now, they're all coming in at the same time, hard and fast. So there's more challenges, more decisions, more opportunities to be emotional, overwhelmed, and not be in a critical thinking mindset and be the best version of you. And one of the leaders actually described being a leader as navigating an assault course. That's how challenging the environment is for leaders. There's so many moving parts, and it's difficult. It is challenging, but this is where you have to build, like, a mindset of resilience and anti-fragility, like really focus hard. And it's not about, and here's the interesting point, it's not about working longer hours. It's about designing better and working smarter. And my goal is actually to help leaders, even with all of these new challenges, actually to work less. That's my goal, because part of the big problem with leaders is they're at the epicenter of everything. And that's why the title of my book is The Entrepreneurial Architect, and the subtitle is Become the Leader Your Business Needs While Loving the Life You Live. So you're not sacrificing your life for the business, which I see a lot of too.
Yeah, and a
this
lot
is
of people
amazing.
sort of stay away, trying sometimes even convince themselves against going into some sort of new ventures, even getting a promotion sometimes, because they see it as this horror. Why would I ever want to? Because it's so insane. I'd rather stay where I am. Like you said, this whole preservation instinct kicks in, that I'm here, I'm okay, I'm safe.
Yeah.
Why would I want to enter this insanity?
Yeah.
Perception of insanity.
And the key principles I teach, and that's why I've decided after the white paper, by the way, that's when I saw the challenges and I saw the stress of leaders. That was the motivation to write this book, by the way. That's why I went on this journey, because I've been them. I know it. And I said, right, I'm going to put this all in a book. And because I've been there, I had a business in the recession of 2008, and as much as I would never like to go back to it, but I mentioned the word anti-fragile. That developed the skill sets I needed to do, not just to build my own business now, but to build my life, because I sacrificed everything in the recession for the business. 16-hour days, 5 days a week, lots of work on the weekends, nothing else I had time for. And I had challenges there. I broke up with my wife. I split with my wife, and then my health was suffering. So I had to step back and really design my life again. And the reason why I mentioned I do ultra marathons, all that, I'm still working very long days. I love what I do, but it's not compromising my relationships. It's not compromising my health. In fact, any crazy endurance run I do, it must improve my health. So I have to go on a health journey. And I talk about this concept of harmony. And this is how you design, you have to step back. You cannot be in the epicenter of everything because you'll never see the truths, right? You'll be stuck firefighting every day. So when you set goals in multiple parts of your life, then you've created a psychological commitment, and it's in it. It's called my mind is the Lights Park principle effect. I didn't say that correctly. I'll have to look it back. My mind is gone. But once you start something, you've got in your psyche now, and then you're committed. Your brain is actually committed to see it through. Funny enough. Oh, it's killing me now. I talk about it a lot, but anyway, I'll come back to that.
I'm pretty sure it will come back. It will come back.
Yeah.
Just one
Definitely.
quick question.
The Zeitgeist trend. So, and I'll just finish this quickly, and then I'll answer your question because it's important. The problem I see in leaders, they set a goal to be the best business in their sector, and they do an amazing job, but it's at the sacrifice to their health and relationships, and sometimes past to no return. And I know this personally. So now I make a commitment. I must set goals in each core pillar of my life, like health, relationships, business, finance, personal goals and ambitions. And then I don't talk about work-life balance. And this is a challenge for leaders. They think they can do a bit of everything. Forget it. You'll just get more stressed because you'll never get there. Create harmony. So create parts of your year where you focus on your business, on your health, get everything set up, build the frameworks to give you a bit of space later in the year so you can then do personal goals. For me, that will be my ultra margins, and create a rhythm through life. And it's like an orchestra. We have all these different instruments. The conductor will bring some of those instruments to the forefront for a while, and then they go back. They'll never stay the forefront because guess what? It drowns out. It's not very good anymore. It's only good in doses. That's a way to think about life. Different parts. Always have your foundations set and lead into them at different and create the rhythm of life. That's a principle I teach leaders so they ensure they enjoy life and it's not the sacrifice. So please go ahead.
Yeah. Shay, last 20 minutes, we've been talking about all the pressures that leaders are facing. And it's not just enough to be technically skillful in certain area. You have to be everything. And there is this pressure. And I can only imagine that the burnout rate among leaders is probably high. I don't have any data for that. But what advice would you give to our listeners who are leaders, who are straining under pressure to perform, to build a culture, to stop, extinguishing fires, to remember that there is such a concept as a harmony that you mentioned? How can they remind themselves to kind of switch to the harmony mode? I don't know what's the best way to describe it.
It's a really good question, and there's a few principles around that, and it is harmony. It's all about harmony and rhythm. Okay, so there's a few principles. You need to design better. You need to, and one of the first questions I ask leaders: if you left tomorrow for 3 weeks, what part of the business would fall down first? They tell me, well, that's the bit we're going to fix first, and then, so it doesn't need you. That part of the business doesn't need you anymore. And then we do it, we go through the different areas systematically. So you build frameworks for the business to support itself. That doesn't mean you leave the business. It just doesn't rely on you. Okay. And then that's on a sort of like a skill set and tools and methods, frameworks perspective. But on a personal level, you need to, we're great at training our bodies. We go to gyms, we do exercise. We're not so good at training our brain, and we assume it can do whatever we throw at it, which is wrong. It's a muscle that needs to be trained, and people are working at their max all the time. It's like a car. If you put a car on a motorway and push it at its max, first thing will happen, it'll run out of fuel, so you'll stop. You'll keep doing that, but guess what? If you don't maintain it, it's going to burn out. The engine's going to burn out. Our brains are no different. We need to learn how to operate in 3 different modes. One is optimal. You need to know maximum and optimal are not the same. You need to know what's the pace that you can sustain on a daily basis for the long term. And so you try and understand. And a big part of that is being kind to yourself and taking breaks. So I still work very hard. Take breaks. That's a non-negotiable for me. Right? I take breaks. But I also have practices in the morning. So I don't wake up with the fear of everything going, what's going to go wrong today? I do 10 minutes of Qigong to set my mind. I do a certain type of breath work, which is very long exhales. They release the calming hormones in your mind and your body. You have stress hormones that are designed to protect you if you're being chased by a predator when we were in hunter-gatherer days. But the problem is, and that happens through hyperventilation, one of the triggers. People are hyperventilating, looking at their computers now, and they're not even in danger. And this gets them into an emotional mindset. And once you're emotional, you can't see clearly. Because again, it's designed to get you out of danger. And your brain doesn't care for, I can solve that maths equation over there if you're being chased by a lion or tiger. So it shuts everything down. It's tunnel vision. That's what happens when you're in an emotional state. So the goal is, how do I mitigate the opportunities? That's where the breath work comes in, long exhales. And even when you're stressed, when you're stressed, the whole point of flooding your system with those stress hormones is to give you the superhuman ability to get out of danger for about 5 minutes, not to be looking at your computer. Because you don't need to be Superman looking at your computer, but unfortunately, that's the response. And that's not good for your body or your health too often. But we've forgotten how to calm ourselves. And then when we get out of danger, you bring these long sighs of relief, and that's telling your brain the signal you're safe. Release the calming hormones. So I do that as a preventative measure. And I also do a lot of gratitude practice, what I'm grateful for, because then with that prep work, that mindfulness, those gratitude practice, when I get to my computer, I'm not just focused on the things that are going wrong. I'm reminded of all the things that are going well. So it puts things in perspective. So it's all about perspective shifting. And then if things go wrong, it's not the end of the world. And then if I do feel triggered during the day, when I'm very busy and hyper, I do this prep work on my breaks, calms my mind. And I do it before I go to bed, so I can wake up good again the next morning. So these are things, and these take time to believe in. You have to do it a while. Some people think it's a bit woo-woo, but you have to do it for a while to feel it. And when you feel the change, then you actually are encouraged to do it more. But it's all about designing your life better. Not to be like, that sounds a bit possibly geeky, and I am an engineer, so I can tend to lean that direction. But you must, as a leader, design better. Not just your business, but your life and your health. And I believe, and I also believe it's a principle that you want to encourage healthy lifestyles for your team. Obviously, you can't tell them what to do, but you want to make sure you look after them too. And they feel that you're looking after them, not just in business, but in life too. That's how you create families. That's how you create places where even if things are going wrong, you're able to work together. We know we'll get through this because we'll work together to make it better. You don't have to have all the answers, but they need to see confidence in you that you're going to lead them through it. You will, because
leading by example is perfect. Sort of, there's so many examples where people feel they have to behave in a certain way in the workplace because they're observing the leaders behaving in a certain way. And that could be either a negative behavior. Well, there's no negative or positive, but it could be the one that is, can lift you up, and the one that can actually drag you down. So if you see your leader not taking any lunch breaks, not taking any breaks at all, writing emails and messaging people at 10 o'clock at night, you will feel like you also have to do the same because you're part of the team and the leader sets the tone. So if you set the tone, you take a break, maybe you even offer your team a break. Or how about, guys, we take a 10 minutes, have a coffee, stretch, go outside.
Yeah.
And that's already going to put a different perspective. They will initiate that themselves later.
Yeah, and that's important because, again, if you think just a very simple, if you think of your demand on your mind when you're working, if you don't take breaks, like your stress levels and energy are going to keep going up and up and up. And then if you keep testing your limits, eventually you're going to go past them. And that's when you burn out, as you said. So
and it's going to affect everyone, right? I mean, what Anastasia is saying is that as leaders, we set an example. And, one of the things that you're mentioning, I think, since the beginning is focus on designing better systems in the culture, the work culture, in your personal life, emotional part of your life, physical part of your life.
Absolutely, in all parts, right? And I even go away for a few weeks at the start of the year to try and set my boundaries for the year, set my ambitions, my value system, my principle system. I also review how I performed against all of these last year. I'm not perfect either, right? It's growing. Part of this is all learning, but I need to do it because it sets the tone for the year. And as I said, like to your point that you said, Anastasia, is that like people don't do what you say, they'll do what you do. It's like kids. Like kids will follow your example, not listen to your words. It's the same in business. They'll follow what the leader does because that's priming, that's mirroring, that's human behavior, right? So make sure, as you said, you're leading by example.
Shay, you mentioned you writing a second book. Is it available to pre-order for people? Does it have a release date, anything at all? So whoever listened, where and when can they do that?
Well, I'm just finishing my final touches on the book before I send it off to the editors. So that means I might have to write my book again. I'm kidding. But there's a long process there. So I would imagine it'll be available in possibly the end of first quarter next year. And what I'll be doing, I'm taking full control in this book. So because I don't want to just put this in a bookstore in Ireland, I want this to be international and I want to help people as far as wide as I can. So I'm going to create a mechanism that I can share it and with a widest audience of this entrepreneurship audience as best I can and control it and create systems to help them through their journeys as well. So that's why I'm taking a lot on with that, but I believe that's how I can have the best impact. So it will be fun. I'm really excited about it. And I've been writing this book for the bones of 2 years now. 20 months I've been writing this book from start to finish. It has been an amazing journey for me learning and then again brainstorming with my clients, my leaders about certain tactics and strategies that we've literally designed together. And they'll be getting all the acknowledgement that we've built in process and it's really helped them.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure our listeners, will find it useful because it's not only based on your so many years of practical experience, but your conversations with leaders, the real examples that that leaders are facing. Besides the book, if some of our listeners would like to work with you, what is the best way to contact you and to find you?
The best way is probably LinkedIn, I would say. My profile is Shay Lynch and at fellow AIBF, so I'm easy to find on LinkedIn. I do have a website, futurestateco.com. That's where you'll see a lot of what I'm about. I usually blog on a regular basis, but unfortunately my time is going into my book. But you'll see a lot of stuff what I talk about there. There is a blog that's been going back a number of years. So there's a lot of good information about what I do and how I do it. And I'm always delighted to have a conversation with anyone to see can I help them. And if there's synergy, if there's compliments, maybe something. But it's about discovery first. I don't like to push myself on people if I can't help them. They're on different journeys and that's okay. There's more than one way to do things in this world.
Well, we really hope that more people will find you because you have incredible insights. Your work is outstanding and we'll be sharing any contact details and your profile and website down below. Hopefully people have an easy way of reaching out.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. It's great to chat with you all. And I hope we can do it again sometime.
It was brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you very much.